welcome to another episode of Horror Stories from the Internet. Today we are checking out a lost episode creepypasta, yes, in the middle of my Sonic Pasta review streak, called The Black Figure, or as it's known by its full name, The Loud House, The Black Figure. Now this pasta is a lengthy one, but this will not be the only episode where I cover a lengthy creepypasta that I'll be having uploaded today as those who are watching this right now should know I uploaded another episode covering another lengthy creepypasta, but yeah, enough of that. What will this lengthy lost episode pasta will have for us? We'll sit back and relax while I review this creepypasta. For the sake of the story, my name's Paul, and like my name, I'm not very unique. I like cartoons, specifically The Loud House. I'm an aspiring reporter / writer. I have a car and a scrappy apartment, a cushy job at a Woolies, anything I could possibly need. Look, I know this isn't very interesting stuff so far, but trust me, when I say the writing is going somewhere, see, I've worked in retail for, I want to say, a decade, but that's not the point. No, the point here is that you come across a lot of strange folks in that window of time. But the strangest guy came to my kiosk about a month ago, and I remember it like a goddamn picture book. I was just scanning items, thanking people for shopping at Woolworths, and not even bothering to look at their faces. My philosophy when going to work was to never waste time with small talk. The entrance / exit is right next to me. I'd like to take advantage of that sooner rather than later. But that was until I saw a blank DVD cover slide underneath my scanner. So I look up about to tell the guy that just because there's no cover doesn't mean he can't pay, only to be trapped in shock and confusion. The guy managed to keep his dirty brown hair and beard relatively presentable, but his brown, torn, and dusty trench coat and pants, and his bare dirty toes, not so much. Same story for his gaunt, downtrodden expression. What are you looking at? The dirty man grumbled, grimacing at me with his surprising pearly whites. I was just wondering if this DVD was yours or... Give me that back! The guy yelled as he snatched the blank DVD right out of my fingers, leaving a gross stickiness behind. How did you swipe that from me biggest pocket? I just shot him the same perplexed glare he gave me. I don't know, dude. You're asking me, I pleaded. Yeah, sure, sticky fingers, the man growled underneath his breath, making me chuckle nervously. I don't know what to tell you, man. I didn't rob you. Maybe it just fell out. Shut up! You don't have nothing! Don't say nothing! Alright, what's going on here? My manager barged in. Yeah, probably getting sick of watching the commotion via camera. This kid's got sticky fingers. Tried to swipe my prized possession. The man raised his prized possession high and mightily. Is that right? Yeah, the man proclaimed as my manager scanned the dirty man head to literal toe. Well, I don't know if you've skimmed over the dress code lately, but yeah, this ain't it, pal. The manager gestured over toward the dress code sign by the sliding door entrance, making his staunch demeanor evaporate into fright instantly. He stumbled for a reply initially, but the man managed. But this is the last place I can get stuff. Everyone else kicked me out. Please. Hey, you can come back, just not like this. My manager clarified. But this is all I have. Well then, I guess you're not coming back for a long time, huh? My manager concluded, making the man sag in defeat, carrying himself out the door. Not before shooting one more glare at me, and before trudging out. What a nut job, am I right? Anyways, next time you have trouble, I won't be there to fix it. Otherwise, keep up the good work, Paul. Thanks, sir? I chuckled nervously as the manager patted my back, going on his way, leaving me to my clouded thoughts as I stared slack-jawed at the sliding door entrance. Yeah, the guy was a little nutty, but not a nut job. Although I wasn't quite sure. I'm not certain even as I'm writing this, but there was one thing I was sure about. I needed this guy's story. Sir, can I go on break? Do you have one already, Paul? The manager quizzed. No, I smiled, raising my hand unsurely, making the manager purse his lips in thought for a moment. Alright, but if you aren't back in 30 minutes, I know I'll be fired, sir. I dismissed, practically throwing myself out of the store, skulking the car park. I managed to catch the strange man just about to leave. Hey! I cried, making the man turn side to side in confusion. To which I groaned in frustration. Over here! I cried out, finally catching his full attention. You wanted me gone, and now you want me back? You had your chance, Sticky Fingers. What? But I didn't. I just want to talk. I beckoned. The man stroked his beard for a moment before turning the corner and ushering me to follow, to which I was greeted by him lying on his back on a patch of walkway grass. So, Sticky Fingers. Okay, for the last goddamn time, I didn't steal that DVD, okay? So just stop calling me that, please. Only if you make up for getting me kicked out. That's still your fault, though. Fine then, Paul. If you're just gonna tell me shit I already know, then you can fuck right off. I'll be out of your hair for good that way. The man bargained, but making me glower as I turned back to the sliding door entrance just around the corner. And then I gazed back to the downtrodden before me, who brought out a lighter but couldn't find a cigarette, so instead he pulled out his DVD cover with his solemn face reflecting off of the cover. You really care about that thing, don't you? The man didn't answer, still coddling his DVD. I pulled out my phone and checked the time. Just a few more hours left. Stay here. Whatever your name is. Joe. It's Joe. Man replied meekly. Oh, well, I'll come back later, Joe. Promise. I promised as I went back to work. After my shift, I kept my promise to the syllable. And luckily enough, so did Joe, greeting me with his glum face, which lit up just barely at the sight of me standing above him. "You came back," Joe remarked cheerfully. "I promised, didn't I? But anyways, now that I've got you right where I want you," I began taking my seat next to Joe. "What's your deal?" Startling poor Joe. "My deal?" "Yeah, you know, your DVD thing. Your clothes, your weirdly clean teeth." Alright, set it down, kiddo. "You want my story?" I nodded in enlightenment, making Joe chuckle. "Well, you gotta do something for me first," Joe elaborated. He making my elated smile dissipate into crippling worry. It's not like I can just hand out freebies here, you hear?" Yeah, I hear," I grimaced. "So what's the catch?" I dared to ask, already regretting everything. Could you give me a ride home? Here's where the place is," Joe said as he pulled out a mint condition photo of where he apparently lived, placing it into my hand before patting it down. Cocking my head to the side, I noticed that it had his address and phone number on it. "Consider it me business card." Close to the end of our rather odorous drive. "So you're telling me you worked for Cartoon Network, but then jumped to Nick when shit hit the fan for you?" No, I worked at Nickelodeon, but got the sack for being a bit too pushy with my ideas. At least, that's what Chris Sakashino told me. Right before stealing my ideas, time I turned on the television. Joe lambasted, putting me in a stupor of something. "Geez, you sure you're paying attention, Sticky Fingers? Now make it a left turn." "Alright, but Chris Sakashiro? Don't you mean Chris Savat? Stop!" Joe screamed, pointing a filthy finger in my face, startling me so bad I nearly hit a road pole. Ratcheting my head around, I met Joe pointing at me with his snarling face. "That's not his name," Joe uttered, "but I will never under any reason say that name that way." Joe cut off, unfazed by nearly killing us both over a name. Although Joe did see the confusion on my face clear as day, as apparently, thus flipping his demeanor completely as he shone his purely smile at me, even having the gal to laugh at me, much to my obvious chagrin, or chargin, or whatever. "What's so funny?" "Sorry, it's just I forgot to tell you why I hate that cunt's name. Well, you know, besides him stealing me ideas from me and harassing the ladies with his rugish charm, eh?" Joe answered, making me raise an eyebrow. "He stole your show?" "No, I said he stole me ideas. Anyways, we're here now, so what's it matter?" Joe proclaimed, already getting out of the car. "Wait, we are?" "Yeah, kid, take a look outside." To his word, I stepped outside my car, but I weren't completely sold. So, taking out his business card, I compared it to the apartment door in front of me. Turns out it was only slightly more dirty, and run down and on the picture. Well, looks like you're done here. Was nice knowing you, though, Pa, was it? Whatever. Keep the picture. Joe declared as he made his way up the stingy apartment steps. But wait, Joe, I want to know more. Give me a call tomorrow. I'm done with you and your fucking voice. Joe called out before slipping into the apartment, shutting the door on me. Pretty grateful, isn't he? Well, that's what I thought too as I began storming back into my car. Only for Joe to pop back out one last time, storming out into my face. Looks like a thought, take this. I don't want you to call me tomorrow, Joe proclaimed, chucking that blank DVD cover of his at me. Much to my shock, I picked it up reluctantly, with my hand still holding his business card. Isn't this your prized possession or something? It is. It's me best work. Supposed to be a standalone thing, but it's got some of the same characters. Like Lori, who's still the oldest, Luann and Lynn Jr. are buddies. Lana's the youngest at 6. You wait, younger than Lisa? Yeah, she's 13, same as the other 3. Anything else you wanted to annoy me about? Oh, and before I forgot, I've all got varying English accents, supposed to come from their mother who's from London. Oh, how I love London. Anyways, what else you want? Well, I don't know if you noticed, but aren't all those ones named after his sisters? I asked smugly, expecting Joe to not take that question well. But instead he paused for a moment, nodding slowly in agreement. Yeah, they were named after him, huh? You know what, Paul? I think you just made me like the film way more. Joe remarked deviously with his toothy grin. I was a little creeped out, but I tried not to show it. Well, thanks. You want me to give it back afterwards? Nah, I've seen it too many times. However, there's a catch. You aren't allowed to redistribute it or do any pirating bullshit. Otherwise, not only you'll be fucked, but I'll be fucked 10 times harder on top. You understand, Paul? Shit. Well, I should have figured as much. To be honest, this whole disclaimer Joe gave is the reason I'm writing this story out anyway. But Joe is right. I would be fucked if I showed actual footage of what this short film was. And that's ignoring Joe's history with Nick and Chris Sakashito. Luckily that guy is gone, but so long as Nickelodeon and Viacom are picking up his slack, I don't think the footage would last very long anyway. Great! Now get out of here, kid. We're done here. For real this time. Oh, and give me that photo back. What? Hey, you said I could have it. I yelped as he snatched the photo from my grasp. Changed my mind. Now scram. It's dangerous to be out here on Friday night. And that was the last I ever heard of Joe before he vanished back into his apartment, leaving me with a dirty car and a even dirtier DVD cover, and even more questions. But those questions could wait. I had a film to watch. Now, I obviously can't show any footage of the film I saw, but I can show you its cover, which, as advertised, is completely blank Nothing but the DVD itself, and all the suspense in the world. I'll try to be as lush with the descriptions as possible, as I'd rather all the time spent studying this thing not go to waste. So sorry if this retelling comes off a bit pretentious.
Black Figure, directed and produced by Joseph Kelly Oley.
Once the introductory text dissipates, we fade out the darkness and into a view of the loud supposed proto-abode, as I'd like to call it. Not a toy or blade of grass in sight amidst the monolithic structure resembling the newer version only in shape. The property was almost certainly untouched by anyone's hand, including Mother Nature's. Like an empty coffin, a really expensive coffin. But it wasn't abandoned, just devoid of any life is all. Well, except for one nasally posh sounding man answering answering an antique rotary phone blaring from inside the house. Sitting alone, feet up on the dining room table, admiring his lavish domicile phone line in one hand and a newspaper in the other. You've reached Dr. Bateman, the sole preparator of Bateman Healthcare. How can I help you today? The man answered astutely as he grinned, and as eerily as his thin black hair was greasy, though that grease didn't carry on to his black gloved fingers or suit amazingly. Ah, Rita dear, come crawling back to your old man, Bateman chuckled wickedly, glazing over the paper in his hand with glee. Newspaper post, Sunday, October 17th, 1930. Unemployment on the rise by 20% globally. There's no roof in sight. Of course, I'd be glad to take them off your hands for good, just so you could get back on your feet. It's a dog-eat-dog world, sweetie. I, of all people, should know that. Bateman replied in a hushed tone, all the while we get a nice view of the dining room's large and imposing bookshelf and a framed newspaper article obscured by the bookshelf just enough to know it was about some kind of house fire and a few casualties to go along with it. Yes, I understand. Yes, I'm not just saying that either. Bateman groaned, going stiff at the sound of someone pulling by his house. Call me back later. Oh, and maybe not on the business line next time? Thanks. Bateman hung up abruptly, not even waiting for Rita to finish whatever she was about to say. Regardless, he darted out the dining room and stopped by the front door, peering through its peephole. The look of curiosity plastered it on his bulging-eyed face, morphing into that of morbid delight at the sight of his lovely grandkids, presumably. Here already? No? Oh, I'd better get ready then, too. Bateman laughed. He didn't even open his mouth, just staring out with his immovable grin. Cutting away to the house's lawn, we finally get to see the proto-louds, with Lynn being the first one out, standing stoic and proud with the same #1 sports jersey, just wearing the dumbest smile I've ever seen. However, when she began scanning the place from the tip of the roof down to the creaky hanging sign reading Dr. Bateman's health insurance, followed by a phone number underneath. Lori, are you sure this is the place? Lynn inquired insurely. Yeah, it's huge. I bet Grandpa's got a kickball somewhere around here. Luann interjected, bounding out of the van and by Lynn's side. Yeah, you could get really lost really easily. Lana uttered meekly, moseying around the front of the van, latching onto Lori's side like a koala. Oh, I wouldn't dare worry about that. Not when I'm with my little koala bear, Lori coddled as she squeezed Lana with all of her might. Tight, too. Tight. Lana wheezed. Huh? Oh my, Lori gasped, letting Lana free upon noticing her turn red face. There, all better now, Lana just groaned in response. Anyways, yes, Lynn, this is in fact the place. No matter how poor the presentation, but anyways, where are your bags, everyone? Accompanying a cacophony of grunting, Lisa revealed herself, carrying everyone's luggage. Here, everyone. Puff. Your burdens. Lisa heaved out before collapsing underneath all the weight, much to everyone's astonishment. Well, what is everyone gawking at? Come on, get your, burdens, Lori instructed. With everyone getting their bags, allowing Lisa to stumble back onto her feet, adjusting her glasses as she dusted herself off. Much appreciated. I was wondering when someone would. Lisa stopped, taking in the domicile and in all of its strange glory. Especially the ragged business sign, Dr. Bateman. The ragged business sign. Dr. Bateman? Didn't Mother say he was a snake oil salesman? Lisa queried, offending Lori. No, Grandfather isn't some lowly snake oil salesman. He's a doctor, and the man responsible for giving Mother a job amidst all this mess. So be nice, everyone. Anyhow, what are we standing around for? Let's get a move on. Now that's something I can get behind. Racia, to the front door, Lynn. Luann declared, shoving past Lynn amidst her head start, giggling all the way too. Although Lynn wasn't as headstrong about it. Yeah, don't wait up for anything. Lynn hummed wistfully as all her sisters brushed past, except for little koala bear Lana, standing by Lynn, looking at her longingly. At first, Lynn was confused about what Lana wanted. 'Twas only when Lana raised her arms out beckingly, and did Lynn finally piece it all together, lifting Lana off her feet and planting her onto her shoulders. Don't get used to this, yeah? I won't, promise, Lana promised. The two smiling cheerfully as they met up with their fellow sisters. Inside the house, we see Bateman grooming himself by a mirror in the bathroom, adjusting his black vest and tie, checking the time with a gold-chained pocket watch. He pulled out his vest, jumping out of his skin at the barrage of doorbell rings assaulting his ears. I'm coming, I'm impatient lot. Uh, Bateman murmured to himself as he hurried down out the door, making sure to grab the ebony cane he left by the sink. Outside, we see Luann impatiently ringing the bell, much to everyone's visible annoyance. You only need to do it once, Luann. Lori pointed out agitatedly. Well, maybe he can't hear it just the one time. He is a grandpa. Have you perhaps considered just standing there and waiting so we don't get yelled at? Lisa urged. Maybe you could try hitting the door instead, Lynn suggested with a sly grin, much to Lisa and Lori's horror and Lana's entertainment. Oh no, Luann, don't you dare think about doing... Hey, that's a great idea, Lynn. I'll put the bags back in the van, Lisa insisted as Luann readied her fist. But before that could happen, Bateman swung the door wide open, catching Luann's fist mid-swing by the wrist. That's enough! Bateman uttered, his demeanor scarring the loud stiff. Even Luann's cheery demeanor wavered just a smidge. Hi, Mr. My name is Mr. Bateman, not Dr. Bateman, or just Doctor. Take your pick, Spawn. I know. I saw the sign, sir. Can you give me my hand back, please? Luann reasoned with a desperate smile, as she attempted to free herself, but his titanium grip didn't budge, not even by a smidge. Eventually, though, he did let go, throwing her hand back to her so hard she nearly fell to the ground, being saved by Lori, luckily. So sorry about Luann. She hasn't had much to do in a good while, you know how rowdy kids can be. Lori smiled, but Bateman didn't seem too impressed. Flattery will get you nowhere. What are your names? I'm Lori, the oldest out of everyone. Lynn, Lisa, and Luann are all the same age, and can be quite a handful, as you can see. Lori elaborated, gesturing towards them, who both greeted Bateman reluctantly. So I've seen, Bateman remarked. Of course, we also have the always resourceful Lisa. She's top of every class in her school, Lori boasted, gesturing towards Lisa. Thank you, Lori. Although the compliment won't mean much when I graduate in a few months, Lisa professed, stepping forward to shake Bateman's hand. Impressive. Very impressive indeed. Bateman admitted in somewhat disbelief. But that thought didn't linger too long as someone riding on Lynn's back caught his wandering eye. And who might this one be? Bateman questioned with a warm smile, pointing his cane at Lana, making Lana scramble off Lynn, cowering behind her valiant shield. She doesn't like me very much, it seems, Bateman pointed out, tilting his head to find Lana toiling to evade his gaze. You simply must forgive Lana. She's just so terribly afraid of meeting new people. Lori answered pitifully. Oh, that old fade, my dear. Always does. Bateman chuckled mischievously. Now, let me show show you to your rooms. And that's exactly what he did next scene, with Bateman walking them up the stairs into the hallway, which was the exact same layout as the proper show. Lori living in her room, Lisa living in hers, Luann living in hers, etc., etc. Of course, the main difference here being the absence of the rest of the family, and the closet down the hall remaining unoccupied as a result. But after showing them their quarters, Bateman neglected to tell where he slept, something that everyone noticed but didn't dare ask out of fear of settling him off somehow. But they couldn't help wondering, no matter how much Bateman outright demanded them not to ask. From light to dark, night befalls the house of Bateman estate with text that reads, "One night later." We bear witness to an empty, lifeless, dim stairway of which the camera scales the stairs without missing a step. Stopping at the very top, where we could hear gentle yet heavy breathing, and it is not coming from any of the rooms the Louds are sleeping in. The cameraman then scampers against the wall, pressing alongside slowly but swiftly, all the way to Lana's room, where a gentle yellow light is emitting from underneath. The cameraman then collapses to the ground, peering underneath the door as the cameraman audibly squeezes through underneath the crack to get a better look. Skulking Lori reading a book whilst sitting by Lana huddled underneath a blanket, accompanied by a yellow lamplight. When they went back upstairs, Grandma and Grandpa were up. "Is everything alright?" asked Grandma. "It is now," said Papa Bear. "Good," said Grandpa. "Let's all have some." "What?" Lana asked with a cheeky grin. Sign. Milk and cookies." "Come on, Lana, dear. Why do you have to make me read everything?" "Well, 'cause I like it better when you do it. Also, can I have milk and cookies?" Lana questioned, making the cameraman slip out of the crack with a sickening cacophony of slurping, darting from left to right for a way out, only to crawl up the wall and onto the ceiling, watching the door, all just in time to hear Lori say, "No, Lana, look, I've given you your bedtime story. I've given you your many blankets, and now it's time for bed, young lady," Lori reinforced, the thought of Lori leaving Lana starting to scare her. But what about the bedtime snack? I can't go to bed without a bedtime snack, please." "Maybe in the morning," Lori brushed off, kissing Lana on the forehead and as she turned out the lamplight, unaware of Lana's dismay. Pretty please?" "No, Lana, good night." "Pretty please with a cherry on top? I won't ask again, promise." "Oh, all right, but only for my littlest koala bear." Lori relented, venturing outside the room, completely oblivious to the cameraman directly above the doorway as she tiptoed down the stairs, all the while that breathing came back. Not that it ever left. No, it just got much worse once it saw Lori leave Lana's room unprotected. Oh. Oh no. Well, pressing onward, the camera just sits there, lingering on the wall like a gigantic cockroach. But unlike a cockroach, the cameraman began to whisper something.
Can't take sitting here waiting for a second longer.
The cameraman murmured raspily, I continuing to breathe their monstrous moist breaths as they began scaling down the doorway, making sure to keep on the edge so as not to be spotted, presumably, and slowly but methodically, the cameraman kept to every shadow. All the while, Lana sat petrified in fright, although it at first wasn't a rational fright. But as the cameraman crept under every piece of furniture in the room, Lana felt something go bump underneath her bed. Lana didn't dare move, instead staying right there. When, well, the monster couldn't get her. But underneath the covers, of course. But unfortunately, for her, that was the worst possible thing she could have done. As a long sickly hand stretched out, pinching a piece of blanket, gently peeling away every layer of protection Lana had, as the cameraman's eyes slightly rose from over her bedside, optic nerves and all. Lana screamed at the absolute highest of heavens as the cameraman's hands swung out from underneath the bed, both snatching her and covering her mouth as she kept crying the bloodiest of murders she could while muffled. By now, the cameraman had long since woken up the entire house with his commotion, so the creature clambered out of the room as fast as possible, only to be cornered by the still half asleep Lynn, Luann, and Lisa. All they knew was that something really big and scary just kidnapped Lana, whose face was absolutely drenched in frightful tears. Unfortunately for them, the cameraman was much too swift to stick around, leaping from the top steps down to the very bottom of one swift movement. The other three sisters quickly trailing back behind, the cameraman dashed through the sitting room, colliding with the beyond flabbergasted Lori, sending her flying into the edge of the dining table, smashing the table's leg in two, but from the force. Lori, the remaining sisters cried, rushing to Lori's aid, all while the creature makes its escape behind the dining room's bookshelf, disappearing. Are you alright? How many fingers am I holding up? Luann cried, forgetting to raise any fingers as she kept shaking Lori to wake up. Never mind her. Lana needs us right now. Now show me where that thing went so I can pummel it into the ground. I believe it went this way, Lisa informed, pointing toward the pitch black abyss that laid behind the bookshelf. Great, now let's go, Lynn began, readying to plunge herself head first into the abyss, only for someone to stop her. Lynn, wait! Lori hollered in fright as she caught Lynn up by the ankle, tripping her over. Ow, what gives? Look, I admire your courage, sis, but you can't just rush in there. You'll be eaten alive. And then what? Lori explained, making her sag in woe. I don't know. Exactly. Now, does Now, does anyone have any ideas? Lisa? Luann? Eh, well, a light source of some kind would be a good start, Lisa suggested. Like a flashlight? Lynn added. Why, yes, that would be perfect, provided you can find one, of course. I'll go scrounge around for one. It's gotta be in someone's bag, Lynn declared, dashing off and up the stairs. I'll try to do something too, Lisa added. Yeah, and find a weapon or something too, Luann also added, humming to herself in thought, scanning the dining room and its many features. Is someone going to help me? My back feels much too raw, Lori ached. Oh, my apologies. Take it easy for now. For now, though. Will you? Lisa apologized as she helped Lori up, throwing her arm around Lisa, revealing to Luann the broken table leg Lori made. Thank you, Lisa. I find I can always count on you in times of trouble. Any luck there, Luann? I'm thinking, Luann revealed, visibly shocking Lori and Lisa. Luann? Thinking? As if tonight couldn't get any stranger, Lisa admitted. Indeed, but speaking of things that are strange, where the bloody hell is Bateman? And more to the point, why didn't he tell us about this? Do you two mind? I said I was thinking, didn't I? Jeez, Luann chastised, stopping the bickering right in its tracks as Luann continued thinking, darting her eyes from the broken table leg to the kitchen, and then back at the two impatient sisters in front of her, until just like that, it all clicked in her head. Well, a good amount anyway. Moseying over to the broken leg, she picked it up, looking around for something, which conveniently was the very moment Lynn came back. Sorry, everyone. No flashlights, no lamps, no candles, nothing, Lynn informed tiresomely, pausing at everyone staring at her, especially Luann. What? It's not that big of a deal, right? Luann walked right up to Lynn, broken leg in hand, before raising her hand out. Give me your singlet, Luann commanded, much to Lynn's confusion. Right now? No, I want it next leap year. Yes, right now. Alright. It's my sweat you're dealing with, though, Lynn disclaimed, reaching underneath her shirt and pulling out a beyond drenched undershirt, handing it over to Luann, who wrapped it around the top end of the broken leg, before running off into the kitchen, shoving Lori and Lisa out of the way. Ouch, Lori bellowed. Watch it, Luann. I've got a patient here. Sorry, Lori, but I need to do this, Luann dismissed, swinging her gaze left to right, landing on a hot plate seated by the kitchen sink. Bingo, Luann murmured with a smirk, rushing off towards the hot plate, turning it all the way to the maximum heat, before placing Lynn's singlet on top of the hot plate's plate, resulting in a beyond abhorrent stench flooding the room as Lori, Lisa, and Lynn all came into the kitchen, with Lori and Lisa covering their noses and gagging on the sizzling sweat vapors. Much to Lynn's light offense, it seemed taking a sniff of the air herself, only to reel from it too. But the gagging soon stopped, as all of a sudden the sweaty rag blazed asunder, Uh, Much to Luann's pride, raising the makeshift torch high and mightily. I've made fire! Aha! Uh, Luann cackled. Well, how about that? Way to go, sis. Lynn congratulated. My thoughts exactly. Although, was it necessary to use Lynn's sweaty singlet? Yes it was. Now let's go get some goddamn answers. Smashing. Now let's... Ah! Lori howled, collapsing onto Lisa, who was able to carry the weight luckily, sitting Lori carefully onto a nearby dining chair. I think it's best if you stay here, Lori, where it's safe, Lisa insisted. What? But oh, pooey. I supposed I'd just slow everyone down, Lori concluded glumly. I'm afraid so, Lisa reassured just as glumly. Hey, don't worry about it. We'll be back with Lana in a pinch. Right, Lynn? For sure, Lynn reassured. All of this making Lori crack a weak smile. Alright then, Godspeed everyone, Lori cheered, her hopeful demeanor vanishing as soon as everyone left. If God would be so willing anyway, if only Mother was here, she'd know what to do. And so the remaining sisters journeyed towards the maw of the abyss. Luann shown the way down, revealing it to be a secret and winding passage, or to be more specific, a deep and dark winding stairway, with making Luann's stomach churn the longer she stared, ignoring the fact a monster could pop out at any moment's notice. Hello? Luann whimpered, her voice carrying on the stairwell all the way down. What's the holdup? It's just stairs. Lynn interrogated impatiently. I'd hate to rush you, Luann, but, what is the holdup? Lisa added. Well, you go first, Lynn. Here. Luann insisted, shoving the torch into Lynn's face, before quickly scooting towards the very end of the line. Lynn just shrugged her shoulders, taking the plunge into the murky, winding abyss. An abyss that they thought would never end. A thought that weighed heavier as time marched. Unflinching. Making the trio's minds wander through bleaker and unbearable, horrible temptations of what could possibly be at the end, but none of that compared to the sudden realization that crossed Luann's mind. Hey, Lisa, do you remember when Lori said about Bateman, about him being missing in action? Of course, I remember. Why'd I'd say the thoughts never left. Yeah, unlike Mr. Bateman, Lynn scoffed, her words taking the air right out of Lynn and Lisa's chests, as if a demon walked right past them. Luann, sis, surely you don't mean that. Oh, don't be stupid. Who else could it be? But that's not all. It's not? Lisa stammered through her trembling breath. No, Luann paused, averting her face to the wall, bracing herself for what was next. Well, what I mean is, he is a grandpa, our grandpa, and therefore Mom's dad, so... But... We know. Just spit it out, Lynn pressed anxiously. Well, that's just it. What if she's in on all this? What if she's a monster too? Just binding her time or something. I don't know. Luann, Lisa cried, darting her eyes around as she toiled for the not right words. I mean, for that were true, why would she send us anyway? Why should she why would she send us away? Lisa answered, with Lynn nodding anxiously in response. Yeah, Sissy, worrying for nothing. Well, I wouldn't say that, Lynn, but for now, let's just move on, shall we? I thought you'd never ask. Lynn replied in false bravado, doing her best to fill the freshly dug hole Luann's epiphany made. Pressing forward, she could see flecks of lights and the noise from below growing louder. Lynn's brow furrowed, determination filling the hole Luann's fears dug. Making Lynn speed down the hallway, soon enough they reached the end of the passage. An aged, lumbering birchwood door, emanating a sickly amber light, shone through its barred window, and through it the noise from before became much clearer than before. Help! Help me, please! Lana's voice rang out, simultaneously revealing the trio and terrifying them. But regardless of their fears, they knew what they needed to do. None more so than Lynn at the moment, Lynn giving her torch over to Luann as she readied to bust through the door. Expecting to make their heroic entrance and save Lana once and for all, and yes, Lana was there. They're sitting alone on an unmade king-sized bed, but she was still crying profusely, her head buried into the palms of her hands. With a lantern responsible for the glow emanating outside the door, hanging above Lana by a meat hook, one of many very sharp meat hooks hanging all around the room, around the trio's shoulder height. After absorbing the ambience, the trio approached Lana, sitting around her on the bed. Everyone doing their part to comfort Lana, with Lynn and Lana cuddling her affectionately as Lisa watched from afar, unable to join in whilst holding the torch. Shh, it's okay. Lynn's here. We're all here for you, and we're going to get you out of here, right? Alright? Lynn promised as she cooed. Yeah, and we'll get yummy ice cream, Luann also promised, but Lana just pushed them both away forcefully, hurling up into a little ball of misery. Isn't seeing us here a good thing? No, Lana sniffled, shocking the trio, especially Luann. But why? Don't you want to go? And, here, Lana. Luann offered her a handkerchief. A handkerchief. Yeah. To which Lana slapped it out of Luann's hand furiously. Of course I want to go. I hate it here. But now we're stuck here. 'Cause Mom hates us. Lana revealed, deeply concerning the trio, especially Lynn, when recalling Luann's fears about her. Who told you that?
I did.
Bateman boomed. Closing the wooden door, the trio entered, stepping out of the dark corner he hid in, revealing his freakish self. He stood just as tall as ever, only completely naked, his disgusting black hairs littering his chest and legs serving as the only means of coverage. Right down to his gargreen toes and curly yellowed toenails, but they didn't grow on the rest of his scrawny, skeletal body, not his arms, not his neck, just his chest, legs, and whatever else was left upon his rigid skull, housing his extended eyes, snaking and slithering in the air.
Oh my, what a lovely get-together we have here.
Bateman greeted, grinning a gruesome grin, wriggling his six-fingered hands eagerly. Stay back! Back, I say, Lisa commanded as she waved the torch in his face, all while instinctively backing further and further away alongside her fellow sisters, making Bateman chuckle darkly.
Oh, Lex, please, if anything, I'm doing your mother a favor, you know.
Bateman began, making Lisa pause. A favor?
Yes, a favor. Ever since Lori came, I knew your mother would be greedy, but and that I would have to deal with her consequences.
Consequences were not consequences. Lisa detested. Yeah, she raised Lori just fine, like the rest of us. Lynn added furiously. And she loves us all very much, yeah. Luann also added, though a bit reluctantly.
At first, but once all her money dried up, she didn't know what to do with you lot. So on she goes crawling back to me. Do you see what I'm getting at here?
Bateman further elaborated as he drew closer, his revelation shocking Lynn and Lisa to their soft and supple cores. That's preposterous. She wouldn't do that. Never. Lisa denied, but backing further and further away with Bateman drawing ever nearer, getting them into a corner.
Oh, come on. Do I have to spell it out? Now? You're all tumors, and I'm a doctor. Your mother wanted an operation to have her financial tumors removed. Do you miserable, wretched rats understand?
Give me the torch, Lisa. Lynn whispered, to which Lisa obliged as Bateman pushed onward, too wrapped up in himself to notice the sudden exchange.
I can prove to you all that your mother left you to die. No, Lana, can tell everyone. No, can't you, little pasty crawler there?
Bateman cackled, making Lana begin to break down all over again, making Bateman chortle in glee. Laying the final straw on Lynn's back as she raised her torch.
Tell you what, little wretch, if you can admit to everyone what was said over the phone, I might just...
Whack. Lynn struck Bateman right across his face with the torch, bursting both his extended eyes and sending Bateman swinging around the room, clutching his now burning optic nerves in agony as he cascaded around the room. Burning blood spattered the room as he toiled in to tide the pain, only to be caught by several meat hooks. The chains wrapped around his arms and chest, locking him in place as he felt the fire spread from his exposed nerves to all across his face. Bateman roared in bestial, primal agony, all the while ripping himself apart as he kept fruitlessly toiling to break out of his meat hook bindings. All while the group just watched, except for Lana, who had her eyes covered by Luann, smitten by the spectacle of it all as Bateman writhed and watching the fire completely engulf his skinless head, and then eventually the rest of his hair. Pale body, spittles of both burning and fresh blood spattering all over the room. Lynn searched for the torch responsible, picking it up, and turning back to Bateman's burning screams. Her brows narrowed, hatred brimming from her every fibery hatred so potent. It made everyone turn to look at Lynn instead, and what she was gonna do next. Only for Lisa to grab Lynn's arm, her fiery gaze snapping to Lisa, averting the torch away from Bateman's writhing body. Leave him. His demons are much better at that than you, Lynn. Lisa reasoned with Lisa reasoned, making Lynn pause in thought, but one look back at Bateman's hideous form told her everything. But we never truly know what she does. With the scene cutting away as Bateman's writhing agony echoed into the next shot. The same shot from the very beginning, in fact. Only, of course, Lori was where Bateman sat, waiting anxiously, tapping her hand on the table repeatedly to stave off the worry, but it didn't really seem to do much. Fortunately for her, many pairs of footsteps were heard approaching, a warm yellow light getting brighter and brighter, much like Lori's ever-growing smile, expecting to see all her fresh-faced sisters, bright and jolly again, just like when they first arrived. But no, hauling themselves out the abyss came Lynn, Luann, Lisa, and Lana in that order. Well, what happened? Lori sputtered, frightened by the display. Bateman happened, Lynn answered bitterly, taking a seat on the table opposite to Lori, bearing the same dour expression her other sisters wore. Oh, Lori uttered, quickly piecing it all together from there. So that thing was Bateman, Lori mumbled, with the sisters nodding lazily in response, making Lori's frown deepen. Did Mother know about this? Who would you think made the call? Luann asked bitterly, Lori's eyes widening in shock, only for the shock to wane back to the same fearful frown as everyone else. We can never go back home, ever, Lana spat, filling the room with deafening silence right afterward. So, what do we do now? Lisa uttered, pitifully so. Or rather, so, what do we do? Leaving Lori's mouth agape for a answer, all that would come out were a fearful, dreadful, heartaching breaths. The final few words spoken came after the final shot, the same shot the short began on, only accompanied by nothing but screaming silence. I don't know. So, that was the black figure. For my final thoughts for this creepypasta, honestly, I kind of set my expectations for this pasta a bit too high, honestly. But despite that, the pasta still was a decent read. Sure, it has some problems here and there with the grammar and how it executes certain stuff and etc. Like, there were parts that made me stutter a bit because of the certain grammar issues I had to read over and correct while reading over those parts in the creepypasta. Like, it kind of made it hard for me to read over certain parts because of these overlooked grammar issues in the pasta and stuff. So, as for the other stuff of this creepypasta, I kind of wished the whole detailing of the whole concept of detailing what happens in the lost piece of media and having little to no reactions from the main character of what they are thinking of so far, of what they're watching and stuff. Like, I know I usually am not into reading lost episode pastas that when they get to the part where they basically detail what happens in the episode, the main character's reactions to the episode or a lost piece of media in particular are not included in the detailing of what happens in the lost episode and stuff. Though I will say I have seen and read creepypastas that have executed the whole detail of what happens in said lost media with the protagonist's reactions to it, without the protagonist's reactions to it, much better. Uh, Much better than this one. Like, this creepypasta is probably the first creepypasta I've ever read that used the whole concept of detailing what's happening in the piece of lost media without the protagonist's reactions to it. Cause anyways, the whole thing that ruins executing the concept of this creepypasta is that it ends on how the detailing of what happens in this Lost Loud House dark short film prototype with a cliffhanger ending for the whole creepypasta in general. It just ruins it a lot for me. Like, the cliffhanger ending did work for like the detailing of what happens in the short film itself, but the cliffhanger ending being like the entire ending for this entire creepypasta itself kind of just ruins the creepypasta in general for me. Like, DJ Sprouts could have gotten a little bit more in detail in the ending for the main character on after he watched whatever happened in the Black Figure short film. It could have ended with the story's main protag, Paul, trying to find more answers on what they just and and Paul trying to call or trying to get in contact with Joseph Joe Kelly Holly on trying to get more answers on why he made this short film in the first place, but Joe does not answer his calls or refuses to elaborate, at the very least, on why he made this short film in the first place. And that way it would have at least did it a lot. And at least it would have done its whole entire concept of more questions than answers. Um, the whole entire gimmick of more questions than answers a lot more better in the first place. And I will say I don't like how the whole more questions than answers creepypasta gimmick was executed in this creepypasta. Because I will say I have seen creepypastas execute the more questions than answers gimmick way more better than how it was executed in this story. But overall, the story is pretty decent. It had some very unique and cool concepts in it, like how he kind of mentioned it to me, before on like before he like asked before when he asked me if he wanted for like to cover his creepypasta and stuff. So yeah. Anyways, um, but yeah, and I really do like how DJ handled the start of the creepypasta. Like, I will say at the start of the start of this creepypasta itself was handled really well in a way that it actually kind of really hyped me up and interested me into wanting to cover what happens next in this creepypasta and what the strange short film might contain. But now, having read this, I will have to say that the detailing of what happens in the lost short film itself was a tad bit underwhelming. not like really underwhelming, but only a tad bit underwhelming. But done very well. I really kind of like the twist in the pasta where the character Dr. Bateman was actually revealed to be a not really a human per se, but rather a weird, strange cryptid-like creature that disguises itself as a human, I guess, from what I can assume. With the dark themes of how his daughter slash the mother of the proto-louds in this short film was the one behind the call with Bateman on wanting to no longer take care of her kids anymore due to financial failures and other stuff. Overall, a pretty decent creepypasta with some flaws here and there, but that was it for this episode of Horror Stories from the Internet. If you have any creepypastas you like to suggest to me for me to check out, let me know in the comments below, and also let me know what you think of this creepypasta, and if you have any creepypastas you would like to share it on the Danger 11 Forums' creepypasta category. This is Wonder Hellblazer, and I'll see you on later in the next episodes or videos.